Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi everyone, how are you today? I hope that you are all safe and healthy. Welcome back to the TOEFL preparation course, and today we are going to discuss structure and written expressions skills 13 to 19. At first, let us take a look at the skills for sentences with reduced clauses, which are covered in skills 13 and 14. Okay, at first let us take a look at skills 13, which is use reduced adjective clauses correctly. First thing first, what is adjective clause, guys? Nice. Adjective clause is a clause which plays the role as an adjective in a sentence. What you should remember is that adjective clauses can appear in a reduced form. Okay, so the key point is that you have to remember that adjective clauses can appear in a reduced form. Alright, in the reduced form, the adjective clause connector, so if we have clauses, then there are the connectors, right? Can be one or two connectors depending on how many clauses are there in a sentence. Okay, but in a reduced form, the adjective clause connector and the be verb that directly follow it are omitted. Okay, so if we have a sentence having an adjective clause or adjective clauses, then if we want to reduce the adjective clause, we omit the adjective clause connector and the be verb that directly follow it. Okay, let's take a look at the example. Here, the complete adjective clause is the woman who is waving to us is the tour guide. So remember, this is one sentence, right? The woman who is waving to us is the tour guide. Now, the clause who is waving to us is an adjective clause because it takes the role as an adjective, yeah, modifying the woman. Which woman? The woman who is waving to us. So it gives more explanation on the woman. So this is the adjective clause. And we can have this full clause like who is waving to us, but we can also reduce the clause. If we reduce it, then we will omit the connector, the adjective clause connector, and also the be verb. So it's the clause will become the woman waving to us is the tour guide. See, the clause reduced into only waving to us. And if you remember the previous skills, yeah, waving to us, then it becomes, do you still remember? When we reduce an adjective clause, then it is become good present participle phrase, waving to us. Okay, remember? Yeah, good. See, another example is the letter which was written last week arrived today. Okay, see here, if we have the adjective clause which was written last week, then we can omit which as the adjective clause connector and also was as the be verb. So it becomes written last week. And if you still remember from the previous skills that we have learned, then this is also a past participle phrase. Present participle phrase past participle phrase. If you remember in these two phrases, also play the role as an adjective modifying the noun it modifies. So the same as the role of the adjective clauses here. Okay. All right. Another example is this one. The picture that is on the table is full of iced tea. Okay. Let's see. The sentence has the adjective clause that is on the table. If you want to reduce the clause, then it becomes only on the table. So the picture on the table is full of iced tea. So this is the what is it? The prepositional phrase modifying the noun phrase here. And the picture on the table. All right. That is 15. Still continuing the skill, yeah. When there is no be verb in the adjective clause, the connector is omitted and the verb is changed into the ing form. Okay, so previously we learned that when the adjective clause has a be verb after the prepositional, after the adjective clause connector, then we omit the clause connector and the be verb, right? But how if the sentence or how if the clause doesn't have be verb? Okay, if the clause doesn't have a be verb, then if we want to reduce the clause, then the connector is omitted still. Yeah, we omit the connector, adjective clause connector, and then the verb is changed into the ing form. So whatever verb there is, then it is changed into be verb. Let's take a look at the examples. Okay, this is the complete sentence, yeah. I don't understand the article which appears in today's paper. Okay, which appears here is the adjective clause modifying the word article, the noun article, right? Okay, so we want to reduce this form. If you want to reduce this form, then we will omit the adjective clause connector and change these verbs into the verb ing. So this sentence become, I don't understand the article appearing in today's paper. Okay, appearing in today's paper. Okay. Okay, note, yeah, not all adjective clauses can be reduced. An adjective clause can appear in a reduced form only if, there is a, what is it? The rules on what kind of adjective clause that can be reduced, right? So an adjective clause can appear in a reduced form only if the adjective clause connector is followed directly by a verb. Only if the adjective clause connector is followed directly by a verb. Meaning that an adjective clause can be reduced only if the connector is also a subject. Okay. You already learned in the previous skill that there are adjective clause connector that can also function as subject, right? So it's not only function as the adjective clause connector, but it's also functioned as the subject of the sentence. Now, only if the adjective clause connector is also functions as the subject, then the adjective clause can be reduced. Okay, yeah, that's That's a note for reduced adjective clause. So we can reduce the adjective clause if the adjective clause connector also functions as the subject of the clause. All right. Let's take a look at this example, guys. The woman that I just met is the tour guide. Okay, since this clause has a subject, which means that the adjective clause connector does not also function as the subject of the clause, then this sentence cannot be reduced. Sorry, this clause cannot be reduced. This one also. The letter which you sent me arrived yesterday. Which you sent me is an adjective clause, right? Adjective clause modifying the noun letter. But then after the adjective clause connector, we have the subject you, right? Now, if the adjective clause has a subject, yeah, which means that the adjective clause connector doesn't also function as a subject, then the clause, the adjective clause, cannot be reduced. So you have to have it fully mentioned or fully written. Yeah, the letter which you sent me arrived yesterday. The woman that I just met is the tour guide. All right, that is for all right, let's take a look at another note on this skill, which is some adjective clauses are set off from the rest of the sentence with commas. And these adjective clauses can also be reduced. Okay, another note is that in addition, when an adjective clause is set off with commas, the reduced adjective clause can appear at the front of the sentence. It means that if we have adjective clauses which are set up from the rest of the sentence with commas, then we can reduce the adjective clause, and once it is reduced, we can move this reduced form into the beginning of the sentence. Let's take a look at the example. Here we have the example, the White House, which is located in Washington, is the home of the president. If you see here in the example, the adjective clause which is located in Washington is set off from the rest of the sentence with commas, right? It is written in between commas. So the White House, which White House, which is located in Washington, is the home of the president. So when we have this kind of adjective clause, we can reduce the clause by omitting the adjective clause connector and also the be verb. So it becomes only located in Washington. And once it is located it is reduced like this, we can move it at the beginning of the sentence. So it can be the White House, located in Washington, is the home of the president. Or located in Washington, comma, the White House is the home of the president. Let's take a look at another example here. The president, who is now preparing to give a speech, is meeting with his advisor. Okay, we can reduce the adjective clause here by omitting the adjective clause connector and also the be form, right? So the sentence become the president, comma, now preparing to give a speech, comma, is meeting with his advisors. Or we can also move the reduced form of adjective clause into the beginning of the sentence. So the sentence becomes, now preparing to give a speech, the president is meeting with his advisors. Remember, if it is the full long adjective clause, we cannot move it at the beginning of the sentence. So we cannot have who is now preparing to give a speech, comma, the president is meeting with his advisors. We cannot have that. But once it is reduced, then you can move and the reduced form into the beginning of the sentence. All right, let's take a look at the actual example of a TOEFL test for this skill. All right, let's take a look at the example. Okay, we have this sentence. Blah, blah, blah. On several different television programs, the witness gave conflicting accounts on what had happened. We have one subject, the witness, and one verb, gave. So the sentence is complete already with one subject and one verb. In fact, it is not complete. So if we want to have another clause, then we need clause connector, subject and verb. And there is no connector, subject and verb here. So this is probably a reduced form. So if it is a reduced form, can we have he appeared? No, we cannot have subject and verb without any connector. What about who appeared? Okay, the answer is because it is reduced. Yeah. The witness. Yeah, the witness is active, so it should not be appeared, but appearing. Yeah, because it's active. So the answer is appearing on several different television programs, the witness gave conflicting accounts of what had happened. Because it is the reduced form. And if it is the reduced form, we have either verb ing or verb 3, right? Either present participle phrase or past participle phrase. We have present participle phrase if the subject is doing something, while past participle phrase is used when the subject is given some action, right? So this one is appearing on several different television programs. Okay, let's take a look again on the table for reduced adjective clause here to remind us. Okay, here with a be verb in the adjective clause, if we have an adjective clause with a be verb in it, then we can reduce the clause by omitting the connector and the be form. Okay, if the sentence doesn't have a be verb, if the adjective clause doesn't have a be verb, then what we can do to reduce the clause is to omit the adjective clause connector and change the verb into verb ing. All right, that is for skills 13, everyone. And now let's take a look at skills 14. All right, now for skills 14, we will see the reduced form of adverb clauses. Okay, so skill 14 is use reduced adverb clauses correctly. You also have learned on previous meeting the skills on dealing with adverb clauses. Now we will take a look at the reduced adverb clauses. How to reduce adverb clauses correctly. As adjective clauses, adverb clauses can also appear in a reduced form. When an adverb clause is reduced, the connector remains, but the subject and be verb are omitted. Okay, different from adjective clause in that we can omit the clause, adjective clause connector and the be form to reduce the adjective clause. In adverb clauses, if we want to reduce the adverb clauses, then what we should do is to omit, to delete the subject and the be verb. So we still keep the connector. Okay, so that's for adverb clauses. We keep the connector, but then we delete the subject and the be verb. Let's take a look at the example. Here, although he is rather unwell, the speaker will take part in the seminar. Okay, we have the adverb clause, although he is rather unwell. Okay, to reduce this form, what you have to do is to omit the subject and also the be verb. So the sentence becomes, when you are, although rather unwell, the speaker will take part in the seminar. So either although he is rather unwell, the speaker will take part in the seminar. The sentence can also be said, although rather unwell, the speaker will take part in the seminar. So we omit the subject and also the be verb. For the second example, of course, when you are ready, you can begin your speech. We have the adverb clause, when you are ready. For this clause, we can reduce the form into when ready. Okay, so we omit or we delete the subject and the be form. Becomes, when ready, you can begin your speech. Alright, so what happened if the adverb clause doesn't have a be verb? Okay, if there is no be verb in the adverb clause, the subject is omitted and the verb is changed into ing form. Let's take a look at the example here. Although he feels rather sick, the speaker will take part in the seminar. Okay, if we want to reduce the adverb clause, then it becomes, and then we omit the subject and we change this verb into ing form. So it becomes, although feeling rather sick, the speaker will take part in the seminar. It also the same with the second sentence here. When you give your speech, you should speak loudly and distinctly. So if we want to reduce the adverb clause here, then we will omit the subject and we will change this verb into the ing form. So it becomes, when giving your speech, you should speak loudly and distinctly. All right, what is the note for this adverb clause? We have to keep in mind that not all adverb clauses can appear in a reduced form, just like the adjective clauses. Yeah, not all adverb clauses can be reduced. And a number of adverb clauses can only be reduced if the verb is in passive form. Let's take a look at the example here, guys. When we have, once you submit your thesis, you will graduate. See, this is an active one. Once you submit your thesis, you will graduate. If the subject here is active, then it cannot be reduced. Yeah, once. Nih, contoh. The example is the adverb clause with once. Yeah, you can only reduce it in passive. Here, the example is, once it is submitted, your thesis will be reviewed. So it can end, because it's in a passive form, then we can omit the subject and also the be form. and the clause becomes only one submitted. So the sentence becomes one submitted. Your thesis will be reviewed. An example on the TOEFL test. Okay, here we have when blah blah blah, you are free to leave. See, we have connector here and we have you as the subject and we have are as the verb. If we have one subject and one verb and we have another and we have one connector like this, it means that we need one more clause, right? So it should be connector, subject, verb, or the reduced form. Okay, so what is the answer for this question? When? Good. We omit this, the subject and the be form. Yeah, so the answer is when finished with the report, you are free to leave. Okay, because this is reduced adverb clause. All right, let's take a look at this chart for reduced adverb clauses. Here you can see with a be verb in the adverb clause. If the adverb clause has a be verb, then we omit the subject and the be verb. If there is no be verb in the adverb clause, then we omit the subject and also change the verb into verb ing. And see, this is the chart for the clause, the adverb clause connector, which can be reduced in passive or in active or both. See, if we see here reduced in active, we have after, before, since, while, if, unless, whether, although, and though. And reduces in passive, we have once, until, when, whenever, if, unless, whether, although, though, where, wherever, and as. See, there are some adverb clause connector that can be reduced in both form, adjective, active and passive, just like if, unless, and whether, although, though. Yeah, and then what else? Oh yeah, that's if, unless, whether, although, though. And there are some adverb clause connector that can only be reduced in passive, just like once. And then we have until, when, whenever, where, wherever, and as. And there are some adverb clause connector which can be reduced in active only, like after, before, since, while, since and while. Okay, so that is basically how you can reduce the adjective clause and also adverb clause. What you have to keep in mind is the notes, yeah, and what to reduce when you reduce the adjective clause and adverb clause. And remember this for adverb clause. Some clause connector can only be reduced in active form or in passive form.